Matthew, I wanted to remind you of a story that Ross reminded me of. That the last time you and Ross drank all night, you pulled out your laptop and made him look at YouTube videos of falling apart grain silos.
Yes.
And then started singing to yourself. And he was very touched by that.
Sometimes when I feel sad, or when I want to have a good cry, I will listen to Sarah Harmer's Trouble in the Fields and watch videos of, and I think the one that I typically go to is The Disappearing Prairie Sentinel, but it's basically videos of grain elevators getting torn down.
Oh, they're deliberately being torn down.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't see videos.
Because unfortunately they have this, tendency to explode.
Oh.
Kind of like sawmills?
Yeah, so as it turns out, whenever there's,
Dust,
it blows up.
Yeah, sawmills explode. If there's
Yes.
Yeah, it's bad. I didn't really realize that was a thing until I read about it. It's really impressive.
Yeah.
Lights the air on fire.
Yeah, the big ones in the province.
Man, your list of recommended videos is very different from mine. You can tell a lot about a human based on their recommended YouTube videos.
Is it all grain silos? Hello and welcome to Pod Keep Our Land. It's what?
Her Majesty Queen Fabiola of Belgium
Would listen to.
We are a show about Canadian politics, parliaments, politicians, and policy. It's March 13th, 2018. I'm your host, Erin Rennie.
I'm Matthew Naylor.
And I'm Patrick Meehan.
Got a great show for you tonight. We're going to be talking about a few diplomatic protocol oopsies that have happened in the last few weeks. Then we'll be talking about the issue of babies in Parliament. From there, we'll move on to the Ontario Progressive Conservative race and Doug Ford, who won that race recently. And we'll finish up with a discussion on the Great Canadian Grain Crisis, version 2. But before we go there, I want to hear about your new project, the Canby Report. Matthew and Patrick have started a new podcast on municipal politics in Vancouver. Tell me about it.
All right, so we, along with Ian Bushfield, who is one half of Politicoast, our competitor/compatriot podcast, based in Vancouver, covering national politics, have realized that while both our podcasts are political in nature, sometimes we get a little Vancouver-centric, and we wanted to parcel that off into something that people who really care about Vancouver politics and may not be our broad national audience might be especially interested in.
Yeah, I'm really excited for it to get into sort of the deeper grain detail about Vancouver's municipal politics, as well as hopefully venturing a little bit into the rest of the regions for the municipal election coming up in the fall. And it should be really fun. We're going to have a rotating cast of guests on throughout the run of the show to try to bring in perspectives and views throughout the city and throughout the different demographic bases of Vancouver. It should be really fun.
Sounds great. So you are podcasting every 2 weeks?
We are going to be podcasting kind of irregularly.
Okay.
Yeah, as the 225 or so days tick down to the municipal election in October.
Yeah, I think it's, I'm really particularly excited about it because I think municipal politics is where we don't talk about it all that often. We talk about the Prime Minister, we talk about the Premier, we talk about the comings and goings in Cabinet, but we don't talk about municipal politics all that often. And yet, when you think about the nuts and bolts of service delivery, of who picks up your garbage, who all that stuff, that's municipal politics. And that, I think, I'm really excited to get into that because it is really important and it's not something we deal with a lot regularly. And I'm also really glad that we're not going to overwhelm our Pod Keep Our Land listeners from coast to coast, including Jersey. Or is it the Isle of Man?
We have the Isle of Man.
The Isle of Man. We have a listener in the Isle of Man. They may not have the biggest interest in Vancouver politics.
Yeah, so stay tuned as Ian and Patrick and myself delve into the intricacies of Vancouver politics as this city decides whether it's going to be Bremnopolis or the People's Republic of Swanson.
You just came up with that on your own right there, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Well done, well done. So where can people find out more about the Canby Report?
You can find out at cambyreport.ca and also where every podcast is found.
As well as Canby Report can be found on Facebook and Twitter. And we've already had a conspiracy theory that we're a secret right-wing front, which I find adorable.
Right wing for Vancouver, we should say.
Yeah.
Yes. We're apparently developer shills is the the theory going around, which is wonderful, because hopefully that generates some extra listens.
By the way, if any developers want me to shill for them, please do get in touch.
Me and Ian might take a pass, but you've definitely got 1/3 of us.
Okay, awesome. Well, I, for one, am looking forward to listening to your first episode of the Canby Report. But our show today is all about Canadian and a little bit of BC politics, so let's dive right in. A few sort of funny stories coming out of federal level, at least. So Prime Minister Trudeau took his family to India on a trade mission, right?
It was okay. So
Was it a trade mission?
it's not entirely clear to me what the trip was. Like the trip itself was personal.
There were trade agreements signed totaling several $1 million.
Right.
Several $1 million. That's not a lot of money.
I think when you're you're going on vacation, but then you realize that there's some business that you could be doing like 20 minutes down, and so you decide to do a little business on the trip and then write the whole thing off for tax purposes.
That is what this was.
Basically, yeah.
That is, wow. So he went there, he had a lot of photos taken, he got into some controversy by wearing traditional South Asian garb throughout the entire trip with him and his family.
Saying traditional South Asian garb is overextending it somewhat.
Trying really hard to say not Bollywood wear.
No, but that's what it was. No, it's like Brampton Bollywood, because the designer was Canadian. That should be noted that he was trying to promote Canadian designers overseas.
It felt weirdly kind of appropriative.
It felt forced.
It felt weird, and I don't know what to say about it other than it felt weird. The Indian government didn't really have much to say to us. Literally, they didn't meet with us with our delegation for days and days. And then he had dinner with a terrorist.
No. He didn't have dinner with the terrorist. The terrorist had been invited to dinner, and then they rescinded that invitation after they realized that they invited someone who had been involved in assassination plots and tried to kill Udall Assange.
The former Premier of British Columbia.
Yeah.
Oopsies!
Yeah, which is like a more substantive and
it should be noted he attempted to murder an Indian a member of the Indian government while he was on vacation, while he was visiting Vancouver Island about 20 ago.
And this is all tied into the evolving nature of Sikh activism. There's a fairly large Sikh diaspora in Canada, and for greater context, I wholeheartedly recommend a piece by Mann, which can be found in the National Post, the Globe and Mail, the Toronto Star. Delete is appropriate.
Turns out it was the CBC. We will link to it in the show notes.
But it is interesting that I find that Trudeau brought all of the Indo-Canadian background MPs in his caucus with him on the trip. This is something that's actually really surprisingly common with all foreign trips, generally with diaspora groups. If he was going to Dublin for some reason, he would have brought all the Irish descended MPs in his caucus, because when people go to these countries and they come back, it actually helps them in their local communities. It's sort of one of those weird quirks of politics that I find really odd.
But it also helps us build ties with other countries. This is one of the great strengths of Canada. I think
that's a good point on that flip side. But I think the reason it happens is more for the domestic political event. And everybody, literally everybody does it. And I'm not painting a bad brush with that. I just think it's just a funny, weird quirk.
I think it's one of those things where there is literally no downside and everybody wins. So, it's good that this happens. It's weird that Trudeau was at one point the only person in the room dressed in an Indian suit that would normally be seen at a wedding, and
including the Indian government officials.
Who are all wearing Western cut or narrow collar style jackets, which look professional and like they belong in a trade meeting and not the musical about that trade meeting.
So this also recently tanked his polling numbers, and I think that it plays into sort of the narrative that's building about him, that he's superficial, that he's in it for the photo ops, and so on and so forth. And I don't know necessarily. I don't want to say any one incident, but it does seem to be building a case that people are buying into.
I mean, it boggles my mind that people are just sort of cluing into the fact that Trudeau is a little bit of a dilettante, but such is politics.
I don't don't know. I mean, I think it's perfectly normal and par for the course for if you go on a diplomatic mission to spend some time like exploring the local dress and receiving and exchanging gifts and like learning about local rituals and part of that is putting on the local costume or dress.
But that's a good point. I hadn't really considered it from that lens, because even I do that when my work sends me to other cities for conferences. Is I'll bill a bit of time, like I'll book a little bit of time before or after the conference or whatever to like see the city.
But like dress wise, opening gala, closing event, middle of the trip special event with like not every day,
100% of
all
the time.
day.
Yeah. Okay.
Like
Some
there
of
are
those pictures are weird. Like, if you just Google image search Trudeau India, like there's
like the real
it feels
thing
odd.
that makes me feel that this whole thing was a bit of a failure is that it made the news in other places. And whenever Canada makes the news in other places, it's never because we're doing something great. It's always because we've done something a little stupid. And this was a little stupid, and not nearly as stupid as inviting a terrorist to dinner, but it's still bad in tone and, unforced error could easily have been avoided.
And before we finish, it should be noted that he is in fact not normally allowed to travel to India because he was a member of a registered terrorist group. And so, like, when we say terrorist,
This is the dinner guest.
this is the dinner guest. Yeah, when we say terrorist, we're not meaning to defame. We're meaning to say that this is accurate statement.
So, lower stakes, equally avoidable. This past week, Rideau Hall welcomed the Belgian royalty
I thought it was the German royalty.
with the German flag. Oopsies.
They're relatively similar colors.
No, they are the same colors. They're both tricolors. They're both black, red, and gold.
Sable jewels and argent. Or
The thing that boggles my mind is that Rideau Hall is in charge of Canada's national heraldry. This is like one of the few
Wait. Can you explain what heraldry is for our listeners?
All right.
Or me?
All right. So, when you have defending your fiefdom, a series of knights, those knights must be discernible on the battlefield.
Does the Manor House play into this? I remember learning about that.
No. The Manor House has nothing to do with it because knights in service to the Manor House all can have separate blazons.
That's what you wear, like, for a semi-formal affair, right?
You can, well, like...
Blazer.
So, you want all your army guys to be dressed in one color.
No,
so
you
that
want
they
them
don't
all
kill
dressed.
each other.
You want them all dressed differently, and you want
Technicolor.
Yeah, and they all have to spend like a huge amount of their lives memorizing the different escutcheons and blazons and shields and crests.
Which one says "Hear me roar"?
So
The Lannisters.
Heraldry.
Yes. Okay.
Heraldry
Yes.
is-
A jewel's lion. No. A lion or rampant on a field jewels. Yes, I can do this. The Royal Canadian Heraldic Society is under the auspices of Rideau Hall. You don't want to confuse your knights, and so everyone gets their own heraldry symbol. They are kept in the national roll of arms. Canada is one of the places where some of the most innovative heraldry is taking place in the world right
There's
now.
like seals and stuff on them.
Yes,
Not like seals as in a seal of office, but like seal as in arf.
Yes, the winged sea caribou, for example, is the national supporter of the Federal Court of Canada.
Can you say that again?
Winged sea caribou. What is so difficult about that?
What is even happening? Okay. So we know what heraldry is. It's describing coats of arms. Coats of arms are in the charge of Rideau Hall. Rideau Hall is where the Prime Minister lives. Belgian...
No. Rideau Hall... Well,
No,
I mean, yes.
sorry, the
yes.
left-
yes,
The
he
governor,
does.
the GG.
He is living on the grounds of Rideau Hall
he is
in
rooming
a
at Rideau
cottage.
Hall.
Yeah,
Right,
he's
right.
crashing at Rideau Hall right now.
Right.
But the Governor General is the one who
Yeah.
is at Rideau Hall.
Excuse me. Yes. The GG lives at Rideau Hall. The King and Queen of Belgium are in Canada right now, and they were greeted by the wrong flag. And not only that, they spelt the king's name wrong? Is that right?
So the Canadian Army hosted the King and Queen for some form of firing of a artillery piece. And on the Twitter account, the Canadian Army tweeted a misspelled name of the king. His name is King Philippe, with 2 P's and 1 L, and the Canadian Army thought it was 1 P and 2 L's.
So, all of this might sound silly to be making a big deal about simple mistakes that all of us make in our daily lives. The reason the press is paying so much attention to it, I think, is because we have diplomatic protocol for a reason. And it's all about making other people feel comfortable and showing that you're a good host. And it's
Respect. It's about respect.
Right. And so part of the legislative function is they usually have a protocols office. Every government will have this. And their job is to know things like what flag is for what country and what order should the flags be put up in and what's the polite way to greet this person and how do we make this person feel comfortable if they're from a different culture.
And what common hand signal that we use that we shouldn't use around them.
Exactly.
The thumbs up, ordering 2 of something. Okay. Yeah. Apparently those aren't good in some places.
So there are pros at this, and it sounds like a really interesting job, I think, but something that is really easy to stop because sometimes flags have the same colors and they're just in a different direction.
I feel bad for places like New Zealand, although not too bad for New Zealand because they had their chance. They had their chance to
Isn't their flag just like a blue flag with a bunch of stars on it?
It's the same as the Australian flag, except they don't have the Commonwealth star, and the stars have red insides as opposed to just pure white. And they had the chance to change it.
I love that he can just explain that, rattle it off.
I mean, I lived there for...
No, I know, but you also named argent as a color.
Argent is silver or white, and then ore is gold or yellow. There's only silver and gold. There's no white and yellow in heraldry.
All right, I'll buy that.
Hang on, white is silver?
Yeah, all white.
That's not true. That's not how colors work.
It's true.
Then what's silver?
There is no silver in heraldry, or rather, there is only silver in heraldry. It is only silver.
So there's no white.
There is no white.
But you call white silver.
Yes. And yes, even though it might be enameled white, it's still silver.
Okay. So one time,
There's also furs.
I met the chief protocol officer for the BC legislature.
Oh, yeah.
And he showed us the schedule for when the Queen came to visit Victoria. Mm-hmm. And it was down to the minute. Like he had a schedule for when the Queen was going to get into the elevator and who was going to get into the elevator with her and when she was going to get off the elevator and then who would be in the next elevator trip and then who would come in the elevator. It was very down every detail.
I mean, this is during the era where alarming the Queen was a criminal offense. So, they could not.
Early aughts.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
was an era where alarming the Queen was a criminal offense. It only stopped being a criminal offense this year.
Right.
Remember we did a thing about that.
Yeah.
Long-time listeners will recall.
So you wouldn't want to alarm her by having the wrong order of elevator rides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, she might just press the button and refuse to come out.
So speaking of BC, a BC oopsie regarding the soccer. Patrick,
Oh, yes.
Would you care to explain?
So, in addition to all of my other quirks, I'm also a big soccer fan and a Whitecaps season ticket holder and have been for many, many years. And I've been very, very excited because for the last 5 years I've known that Canada was bidding for the World Cup. And I knew that we were going to get it. And the bidding is in and it looks like we're going to get it. We're basically a shoo-in. It is a joint bid with Canada, United States, and Mexico. This is way more background information than is necessary, but I really like soccer.
Really? Because, we spent, 10 minutes on heraldry, so...
Fair point. So the bid is in, we're going to win, and Canada will get something like 6 or 8 World Cup games. And I went to the gold medal game, Women's World Cup gold medal game, and I loved every minute of it, including when I was heckling Hope Solo offensively. But
she is the worst.
She really is.
I don't even care about soccer, but she
really
is an
is.
awful person.
And I was it was a very American-centric area of the stadium, and I nearly did not get out of there safely. And so we've all been really excited about this. All of the Whitecaps fan base, all the soccer fans, all the Euro fans in Metro Vancouver have been super excited about this because we knew we were going to get a game. And today in question period, Jazz Johal, MLA, asked Lisa Bear, Cabinet Minister, why she missed the deadline to apply. And it sounds like the deadline was either last night or this Friday. The government has said they haven't missed the deadline, it's this Friday, but they're still considering whether it's worthwhile trying to get a game here. And I will be so livid if we do not get a game here. It is the cultural event of the century in terms of professional sports in Vancouver. It would likely be the greatest professional sport game ever played here.
I suppose that's
Okay, yes, the Olympics, I forgot about them, and I probably shouldn't have. But it would be such a staggeringly big event. And why would they even consider not doing that?
So they have to apply to the federal government to be a host city, and they may have missed the deadline.
Yes, and regardless of whether or not they've missed the deadline, they have come out saying that they're weighing the pros and cons and looking into how much it's going to cost to do it.
Now, have they launched a public consultation on this in any way?
Oh my god, it would be the 34th public consultation they've launched.
Like, I don't think I'm even being that partisan here, but there have been, like, a lot of consultations. We've been informing you about, like, several of them.
Yes.
But, like, at some point, just make a decision and bid for the stupid game. I'm not gonna go, but, like, it's gonna bring a lot of people, and, like, other people care about it, and I care about other people, so they should be able to go to the stupid game.
It would be such a politically short-sighted move to do that. And it would detract from Vancouver's everything. And so I'm really wanting this to happen.
I don't understand why Vancouver, maybe this sounds a little presumptuous, but like why do the cities need to apply? Why wouldn't the federal government just say like these are the biggest urban centers with large stadiums? That's where the games are going to go.
And that's basically what everybody knows. Everybody knows it's going to be like Toronto, Montreal, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver for sure. Likely Edmonton and Ottawa because they both
Calgary.
have likely Edmonton over Calgary because of Commonwealth Stadium as well. Edmonton has a professional soccer.
McMahon Stadium is not good.
And Edmonton also has a professional soccer team already and a professional soccer fan base. But then
Calgary is like rabid for sports though. So
no, I know, but those are the cities that would be on the bubble of getting a game. Vancouver is just a shoo-in. We had a Women's World Cup gold medal game. We have a successful soccer franchise here in the highest league in North America. We host the Canadian men's national team occasionally. Like this is, and we've been hosting the Canadian women's national team forever. Like
at some point, you have to say like, yes, we would like to do it, and the federal government can't just say like, you're doing this.
Yes.
Cancel the booking at BC Place. Cancel the gluten-free expo. It's time for the soccer.
Here is the soccer.
So yes, I think it's fascinating. Just it's bizarre to me that the NDP would hedge on that. And maybe it's because they're too consultation focused and they want to make sure that everyone likes the things they do. But I really hope that they show some sense and just write the check.
Kind of sounds like it just caught them off guard.
Yeah, I mean, like it might just be a junior minister who didn't know her file and didn't know.
Well, and that's the kind of thing that does happen in a new government. Is you get junior ministers that flub things easily. And a senior minister did come out later on in that day and clarified worse. I think it was Bruce Ralston that came out and said they were really looking at the costs involved and what it was going to go and why they would, whether or not they wanted to.
No, just say, please expect something in the next couple of days.
But could either of you see this as being not something that you just would have to do?
I mean, yeah, of course. I can see
the benefits.
Yeah,
sure.
Like,
if Canada gets the World Cup, why would BC government not seek to make sure there was a game here?
I mean, it makes perfect sense to me, but
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm a big soccer fan, and I'm really hoping that the NDP fixes this problem.
Well, I want to stick with BC, but I want to move on to another topic, which is the topic of babies in Parliament, in honor of International Women's Day, but also recognizing that not all parents are women. The BC government has done something very excellent, which is they have changed the rules to allow babies under the age of 2 on the floor of the chamber, the BC legislature. And prior to this,
they had to hover.
A baby.
Hover right above
the baby
floor.
was a stranger.
A baby was considered a stranger, and according to the rules of Parliament, strangers are not allowed on the floor of the chamber, except for on Budget Day, right?
Yes.
And Throne Speech Day?
And Throne Speech Day, where former MLAs are allowed.
Always allowed.
Always allowed, which is a fascinating thing. So,
but they're not strangers. That's
they're
the
not
thing.
strangers,
They are
yeah.
known to the house.
But yeah, no, they do allow. Or for example, like Thomas Mulcair was allowed onto the floor the other day for I don't know what the rule is that allowed.
I'm pretty sure that's by unanimous consent of the house.
But also
leaders.
not during votes too. Mm-hmm. And so when votes happen, you have to like throw the baby out, I guess. Traditionally,
if they can't like hold their head up, does it really matter if they're not standing up? Or
So we laugh, but this is a really important issue because if you are a parent, you don't get maternity or paternity leave. You don't have somebody there in your place voting for you, so your side has one less vote that they can count on. And in a place like BC legislature right now, that really matters.
But it's that kind of everyday sexism that's written in rules that we think should have been fixed decades ago. But it only hasn't been fixed because we've not really had a lot of women in politics historically.
Although it is a good reminder, especially since you brought up earlier that Spencer Chandra Herbert had his child on his shoulder.
Yeah, Spencer Chandra Herbert was chairing a committee of the legislature the day the vote changed, or the day the rule changed, and so he brought his I believe like less than 1-year-old child, put the kid on his shoulder and had him there for the thing, which would have been not allowed prior to that, which means that a parent can continue to raise their child while working.
Which is a reminder that feminism is for everyone.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and also a reminder that we just assume women are going to be the ones doing the child raising.
Right.
And that's why when we think of this role, we're like, oh, this is going to really help women. And we don't think that it's going to help men because we're so ingrained with our sexism.
Yeah. I think it's really important to pay attention to when politicians retire and they say, I want to spend more time with my family. Pay attention to how many of those people are young parents. And I think we would really notice a relationship between the ability to be an engaged parent and the ability to be an engaged parliamentarian, because being in Parliament is already taking up so much of your time. You have to travel, especially if you're going to Ottawa. And then if you have newborns, you have to be close to your child all the time. And to have to be away from your party and not being able to vote is a real sacrifice. So
yes, one that could bring down the government.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And it's such a simple solution, right? Just to allow people to have their babies with them, babies who are sleeping most of the time anyhow. So congratulations to the BC government. It's too bad that it hadn't happened a whole lot sooner.
Well, it seems to be just gradually happening across North America. Federally, it's going to come soon. The U.S. Congress did it like 10 years ago or something like that. There've now been, I think, 10 U.S. Congresswomen that have given birth while in office. And we're about to have the first U.S. Senator give birth while in office, Tammy Duckworth, my favorite senator, who is phenomenal. She's having her second child. She already had a child while she was a congresswoman, and now her congressperson. Now she's going to have a child while a senator. And she's basically told them, you change the rules or you have to force me out.
Yeah, but isn't it terrible that it's 2018? She still has to fight.
Yeah.
In order to be able to vote in the Senate.
Yeah, and especially with similar to BC, where the votes are that close in the U.S. Senate, there's a real incentive for the Republicans not to allow it.
All right. Well, before we get too deep into U.S. politics, because that's something I've tried to avoid.
But do look up Tammy Duckworth. She is one of the coolest legislators in the world.
Yes. We are, in general, lagging far behind many other G20 nations. Particularly Britain has done quite a bit to improve the working lives of parents in their parliament. I remember seeing David Cameron and Nick Clegg when they were Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister respectively. David Cameron having a child and then taking a couple of weeks off his parental leave to just be like, no, I'm not going to be Prime Minister for these weeks. Nick is going to handle it. And
it was fine.
And it was fine. Britain kept on keeping on, slashing drastically and embarking on a policy path that eventually got Nick Clegg 8 seats. But the system worked. It worked. The system worked.
The system worked.
I disagree with the policies that they were doing, but the system worked, and it was better for David Cameron as a parent, and Nick Clegg got his tiny taste of power.
I think
I'm reading his book right now.
It is important. I really appreciate it when there are small children in any kind of public event, because even children are noisy, and that can be a bit of a surprise sometimes, and you're like, oh, somebody's got a crying child. But it's a reminder of why we do these.
Yeah.
Why are we here legislating or having this public meeting or whatever? It's because we care about the future, because we care about future generation. And I think it's nice to have small children in the legislature, because it sort of puts all those decisions decisions effective.
And to go back into that, I think the federal government launched their budget a couple of weeks ago, and one of the big things that came out of the federal government budget was 5 weeks parental leave for the non-birth parent, which is mandatory, use it or lose it kind of thing, but businesses have to allow for that 5 weeks leave, and I'm personally really excited for it, because Erin, my partner, and I are considering having kids soon, and I would love to take as much possible leave as I could, and I think the other thing it does that I'm really excited about is that it helps everybody, because now an employer knows that everybody they might employ, if they have a child, will take a leave, and they'll have to deal with that. Whereas right now, it's, an employer says they're hiring a woman, well, what if she leaves? But now they know everyone's going to leave. Now, it was only 5 weeks, and I would love to see it be the full amount, but I think it's a really huge step forward.
Yeah, that is great.
And if you want more information about that, you can find that on the budget website, where you can see the 4 sections of the budget: reconciliation, and then, of course, growth, progress, and advancement, which are synonyms, are they not? Like growth, progress, and advancement. I don't know which one that one falls in, the parental leave falls into.
Advancement?
I would have said progress, but,
Actually, growth on a very technical level.
Demographic growth, yeah.
Well, I was more going on, the size and...
Oh, the pregnancy.
So, well done for your completely meaningless buzzwords, Minister Morneau. Well, we've gone from babies to budgets, and now we must move on.
We must move on. We must move on. So, I want to talk about the Ontario Progressive Conservative...
I just think it is really great. I think this is great news. Doug Ford's election is great news, because it is finally time that some government, some political party, anywhere in Canada has decided to take the issue of marijuana legalization, regulation, and distribution seriously. And they have done this by electing someone with real on-the-ground experience.
Right. Yes. So Doug Ford, brother of the late Rob Ford, former mayor of Toronto, won the Progressive Conservative of Ontario leadership race in this last week, beating out Christine Elliott, who had both more ridings and won more votes than him, but he still got the most points, so he was the winner.
Yeah, she really Michael Lead that one up.
After a brief recount, or discussion about a recount at least. And so Doug Ford is going to be leading out the Progressive Conservatives and leading them into an election season, which is in just a couple of months, hoping to beat Kathleen Wynne with the Ontario Liberals.
The tremendously unpopular Premier of Ontario.
Yes, and it sounds like the polls are still in Doug Ford's favor, despite...
Oh yeah, I think he's going to win.
The many concerns that many folks have about him.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think if this were any day before November 2nd, 2016, in my life, I would be laughing and saying that the Ontario Liberals are guaranteed a re-election win. But I now live in the age of Trump, and I can no longer have absolute faith the electors will just shut that crap down. And Doug Ford has a real chance, and I don't like that. One, he is a buffoon. He is a former hash dealer who locked down the Mississauga hash dealer market through alleged violence. And this is the world we live in.
Well, I like free markets and not monopolies, so that doesn't sit very well with me.
Were you? I was surprised. I thought Doug Ford was going to be second last. I mean,
I thought
Carolyn Mulrooney,
I thought Doug Ford would come in a very close second, but Christine Elliott would win.
Yeah.
And it very nearly happened that way.
Yeah.
It just didn't, and that's because this decade has decided to not be very good.
What about you, Matthew? Were you surprised?
I didn't really have a strong predictive force one way or the other. I thought, people kept talking about Doug Ford. I'm like, well, Doug Ford has Ford Nation behind him. He might well win. And I think, as far as predictions go, I think he's going to be premier.
I mean, that's a safe bet.
I think it is going to be.
He's also said he's going to do a personal hatchet job on the campaign platform that they're going to run on.
Didn't he promise not to do that?
No. That was actually no candidate promised not to do that. Every candidate promised to wildly change the platform and move it in a far more conservative direction. Patrick Brown had moved the platform into a fairly middle-of-the-road stance in a lot of ways. So Doug Ford has promised to go back and eliminate sex ed from the Ontario curriculum, high school curriculum. Doug Ford has promised that he's not going to impose a carbon tax, as the Conservatives had already pledged they would. Doug Ford has said all sorts of things that he's going to go through. And the thing that blows my mind is election platforms are like really complicated and have like manifold different things, and they involve money and dollars and whatnot. And he said he's personally going to draft a platform. I wouldn't trust any one person, let alone Doug Ford, to be able to competently draft a platform.
Maybe he's spelling it like DRAUGHT, like the beer.
Draft? Oh, draft beer. Draft beer, not people. Yeah.
Okay, also, what is it with conservatives opposing conservative solutions to things? Like, the most statist response to the climate change thing is
a carbon tax. Yes.
The most statist. Yeah. The most statist.
The most expansion of government.
Yeah, the most expansion is a cap and trade regulation of the carbon market. The most conservative one is a carbon tax.
It's just
the most statist addressing of the housing crisis in Vancouver would be a massive expansion of government-owned and run housing and nationalization of empty units. The NDP is not doing that. They are tinkering with the tax levers that were put in place by the last government.
They're also building a whole pile of supply.
Well, depends on
Hold on, okay.
I feel like we've moved away from Ontario's dealer premier.
It's okay, fine. It's just that conservatives should be in favor of conservative things and not opposed to the concept of there being a problem.
But conservatism is no longer conservatism as we think of it. Conservatism is not the conservatism of yore. It is now a alienated, I feel like I'm being put down upon by the rest of society, bitter, angry pill that people like Doug Ford manipulate and abuse to their political value.
And that's why conservative flavored people like me belong to the Liberal Party.
Honestly, at this point, if I was an Ontario Conservative member, at this point, I was thinking about this in the shower the other day where I do most of my important thinking. If I was an Ontario Conservative, I was a reasonable, rational one. I was an Andrew Coyne Conservative. I was a U Conservative or what have you. I would take out a Liberal Party membership at this point, because just simply standing back and not being involved in the party isn't working. Fighting against them inside the party isn't working. The only way you can tell that party, the Conservative movement, to stop supporting and stop electing these people is to leave it and help another party.
Yeah, I think this latest PC leadership race was a really good example of that. It's such a hodgepodge of issues that don't really seem to be coherent when it comes to the religious rights stuff around sex ed and abortion, and then this anti-tax statement around the carbon tax, and then this other flavor of conservatism that Doug Ford brings, which is the straight shooter, not an elite, sort of talks like it is a man's man kind of guy. These three kinds of conservatism don't really seem to be coherent, and yet they do win elections from time to time when the Liberals screw up enough.
Yeah, and that might happen here. I think Kathleen Wynne and the Liberal think tank had really positioned themselves to destroy the NDP's vote and eat it, so that they could beat back a moving to the center Patrick Brown. Their whole playbook is out the window. Because Patrick Brown was the moderate who was bringing the party to the fore, and
he didn't feel very moderate, oddly enough.
He said that they weren't going to do anything with sex ed. He said he wholeheartedly bought into a carbon tax. He
was going for the center.
Yeah, he tacked hard to the center in a way that really pissed off Ontario PCs.
The Stephen Harper playbook, the much less successful or interesting sequel to the Silver Linings playbook.
I can think of at least 3 people who would watch that movie. The Stephen Harper playbook.
Oh my god.
So okay, Patrick Brown was moving to the center. Patrick Brown, by the way, did not win his second chance at the leadership.
He was in and then out.
Doug Ford, it sounds like the Liberals, their play is going to be to try to paint him as the most extreme right-wing, religious right guy
Paint him?
ever. That's what they're going to try to
painting
do.
implies that they're saying he's not that.
Well, he's not a strict Christian.
Oh no,
Right?
no, that's true.
And I don't think he's gonna stay very close to those religious ideas that helped him get in. I see him moving away from that very
possibly not.
fast. So I think it'll be hard for Kathleen Wynne to make that case.
Yeah.
This is an extreme right-wing person and better vote Liberal.
The thing is that his support is in the suburbs of Greater Toronto. And the thing with the suburbs of Greater Toronto in Ontario is they're like 30% of the ridings in Ontario.
It's like Surrey and the Fraser Valley. There's a lot of votes down there.
Even more as a percentage of ridings in the province. Toronto is 50% of the population of the province, and those suburbs all vote are like overwhelmingly Ford Nation. It is going to be weird.
Yeah, he almost won that last election. If John Tory hadn't been running, I think if John Tory hadn't run in the last mayoral election and it had just been Doug Ford versus Olivia Chow, I think Doug Ford would be mayor of Toronto today.
Which actually, John Tory is now going to have to hard shift left at a municipal level in Toronto because there's now no right-wing boogeyman because there was always the fear of Doug Ford coming back out of it and coming back and running against him. Now John Tory has to go left. And
Silver linings all round.
Yeah.
Unless Doug Ford becomes premier, then it would make sense for Tory to go right.
Well,
Unless-
the electorate's not going to support that.
Yeah, unless he does want to shift left because fighting with the level above you is always good politics.
Yeah,
But
no,
not good for getting goodies for your city.
Yeah, but
Also
you know,
true.
Braggers never cared about that, so...
but yeah, no, it's an interesting play, and I'm so baffled by the idea that Doug Ford is a viable political candidate anywhere.
Should we talk about the Ontario NDP?
Why?
Yeah,
Nah.
I mean Andrea Horwath exists, and she will attempt to do something during this time.
It being a provincial election.
Maybe their time will come. No, I'm sorry. Their time was 1988 when the Peterson-Ray deal occurred. Their time happened. It was then, and it has passed, and it will never come again. Tell me I'm wrong, Patrick.
No, the Ontario NDP, if ever there is a party that cannot win, it's them.
I say this as an Alberta Liberal. Like, the Alberta Liberals have a greater chance of forming government.
Are they still a party?
Technically.
Okay.
I want to believe you, except it has been such a strange past few years for politics that I kind of feel like anything could happen.
Her favorability rate numbers are apparently quite high amongst the party leaders, in terms of like being the highest of the three. Notably, Doug Ford, who's reviled, and Kathleen Wynne, who is bizarrely
Doug
hated.
Ford isn't highest of the three, former hash dealer of nar. No, that was his brother.
Yeah, and so maybe something can come out of that. We'll see, but I'm not up. I don't think New Democrats in Ontario are optimistic, and that says something.
Well, Ontario could be beating out BC for wackiest politics.
Yeah, we used to be the wackiest province.
Yeah.
We were known as wild and wacky BC. We literally had a premier named Wacky. And now we've been, like, surprisingly not wacky for the last 20 years. Like, 16 years.
6 months?
Okay, yeah, the last 6 months. Okay, so the last year did occur. I forgot about that.
Blocked it out.
After we finally figured out who the government was, it's been sort of not wacky.
Yeah, and it is pleasant to know that constitutional monarchy and responsible government do still eventually work things out.
Yep.
God save our gracious queen and her representative, Judy Guichon.
Okay, well, on that note, we're going to leave Ontario and their conservative politics. We're going to move on to the great Canadian grain crisis.
Are we doing this?
Version 2.0.
Do we have to do this?
We have to do this because it's very important.
It's very important.
This is the trains thing that comes up every couple of years.
Every couple of years, we somehow lose sight of the fact that we supply a huge amount of the world's grain, and it is grown in the middle of the country, and the ships that ship that grain can't sail to Saskatchewan
Yet.
Because of the pirates.
the pirates keep the ships at bay. Mm-hmm. But there's only one last one.
Yeah, well, that's why they have to...
What our viewers can't see is right now, Erin and I are grinning with very self-satisfied grins, and Matthew is not having any of it.
Patrick, this is serious. This is the Great Canadian Grain Crisis.
I used to be a farmer and I made a living fine. I owned a little stretch of land along the CP line. But times went by and though I tried, the money wasn't there. The bankers came and took my land and told me fair is fair. I looked for every kind of job, the answer always no. Hire now, they'd always laugh, we just let 20 go. The government, they offered me a measly little sum, but I've got too much pride to end up just another bum. Then I thought, who gives a damn if all the jobs are gone? I'm gonna be a pirate on the river Saskatchewan. Part of our grain-based musical program for this evening.
So this grain train thing is basically grain is sitting in silos.
Grain on the plane can't get on the train.
And why?
Is it because they're too busy transporting
the grain?
Is it because they're transporting ducks and wolves? Because you can only take one at a time across the river.
Is that an Oregon Trail?
No, you're a farmer and you have grain and you have ducks and you have inexplicably wolves that you need to get across the river and you can only take one of them at a time.
Only one grain.
So the question is, how do you get all three of them across? Because if you leave the ducks with the grain, the ducks will eat the grain. And if you leave the wolves with the ducks, which you inexplicably have wolves involved, the wolves will eat the ducks.
Wolves are not a livestock.
You can, however, leave the wolves with the grain.
And
so
take
the
the ducks
question
first.
is, how, in what order do you take them?
Ducks first?
But then what? Because then you come back and you get the grain and bring it over for the ducks, and then you go back to get your inexplicable wolves, but then you've left the ducks with the grain on the other side.
There is a solution. Just look it up. Anyway, the reason there is a problem this time around, and like for our Vancouver listeners, the next time you see English Bay, take a look and see how many ships are floating out there. There are a certain number of berthing spots that are available for container ships and hopper freighters.
I think it's 11 in the winter and 14 in the summer.
I think they actually upped it because of the grain crisis last time.
Also, I really shouldn't know that number.
The last time, all the berths were full, and they started filling up the Nanaimo berthing spots because there was such a backlog. So there was a problem in our supply chain getting the grain from the silos and the elevators on the prairies, on the trains, over the Rockies to the Richardson Grain Terminal, or Viterra.
I'm really sorry, listeners.
Where it's important. We have a lot of agriculture in this country.
So why is it happening now?
So we've such a stupid reason. We've had a very cold winter.
So you're telling me that the train companies aren't
CN and CPA
familiar with how winter works in Canada?
Well, no, they are familiar with it, but the fact that the winter is so cold and the grades across the Rockies are so steep, and because trains have a contact point on the rails that is about the size of a toonie for every single rail car, that means that there isn't a lot of stick friction, or to prevent the slippage going back down the tracks if there is too much weight, so they have to run shorter trains when there is potential to be ice on the tracks. This is why when you're trying to get down to Bellingham, sometimes they're like, oh, there are leaves on the tracks. We have to delay everything for 4 days.
This is when you're trying to get to Bellingham on the Amtrak, I assume, not in your car.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I drive my car on the tracks. What are you talking about? You know how cars merge into the train, just how bikes merge into car lanes. It makes perfect sense, right? It's not like modes of transportation should be separated.
Oh, right. Okay, so they need smaller cars to get the grain.
No, smaller trains. Fewer trains.
Yeah, well, cars on the train.
Yes, less heavy and smaller numbers of cars.
When it's cold, and it was extra cold this winter, and so they didn't have enough small cars for the train.
Well, no, they didn't have enough
trains for the
train
cars?
space. They didn't have enough. Yeah, they didn't have enough train space. Didn't have enough rolling stock that they were able to pull across the mountains because they had to run such smaller trains.
So grain was being left behind.
Grain is being left behind. Grain is still being
So
left
what's
behind.
the solution?
The solution is for the Ministry of Transport to tell the rail companies to move the grain, which is how this problem got solved last time this happened. Last time, it was a bit of a different situation because oil prices were very, very high, and so they were transporting bitumen and tanker cars filled with oil.
Right. Yeah, because there's a prioritization of what gets more value
it's
for
the
dollar.
iron laws of economics. You
Yeah.
just do the thing that brings you the most money. But unfortunately, we are part of like a whole functioning interlocked economy. And so when there is like a major crisis that was, one, screwing up the Port of Vancouver's like transportation schedule, and two, really screwing farmers on the prairies, the Ministry of Transportation was able to just invoke a certain aspect of the National Transport Act or National Railroads Act and tell the rail companies to ship the grain, which
So
is
they've done this now.
probably what they are going to have to do
Okay, I
again.
have a question. But so I understand the operational problem. I don't understand how having the Minister of Transportation tell you to do something makes the weather problem go away. Like this is a problem that the minister has no control over.
Basically, what the minister would be telling them to do is like stop shipping potash, stop shipping oil.
Stop shipping stuff that doesn't go bad.
Yeah.
And start shipping the stuff that's going to rot in the...
I
Is
see.
that what you're
Okay.
saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not even that it's going to rot, because grain can stick around for a while. Like,
I mean, I have flour in my pantry that I think I've had since 2014.
But then what happens is the grain problem becomes the potash problem or the oil problem. Like, wouldn't that just create problems for the potash industry?
like
or?
potash is just like so much more valuable than grain on a pound for pound basis.
I still don't really know what potash is.
It's Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very important to Neptune. So, like, maybe Neptune Terminals has to wait an extra couple of days for their thing, but, like, the Canpotex Express, or whatever the ship is going to be, is still stuck out in that berthing thing with all the other ships that are waiting, and so, the whole port operation is gummed up. And so, yeah, it will delay things at the potash terminal, and as it turns out, our refinery shut down for repairs, so the oil thing is not so much
helpful.
a problem anymore. But the operational problem can be like mitigated, even though like the minister, despite being an astronaut, has no control over the weather.
So
That is great, but he's an astronaut.
The farmers in the grain industry has been lobbying for this for a while.
Yeah.
And the minister says it's coming, but it's held up in the Senate,
Yes.
and they want the bill to go through faster.
Well, and this is the thing that I think is a little weird, is that like they could issue an order in council, which is a little more
Didn't
heavy.
Lisa Raitt do that?
Yes, Lisa Raitt did
It was
do
Lisa
this.
Raitt.
Yes.
Yeah. With the Conservatives.
Yes.
Like a bunch of years ago.
Yeah, so Lisa Raitt was oddly involved in a lot of these like heavy-handed government things, like shutting down the Canada Post strike and this order in council that instructed CN and CPR to ship the grain, but it was within her ambit to do such a thing, and unfortunately, because that was an economic thing where they were not like where they had the rail capacity but didn't have the economic incentive to do so, they could just say, well, you have to do this now. And now it's a little more operational, and the bill C-49, which Minister Garneau has introduced, also provides some backstoppage for the loans for farmers, because like in terms of farm economics, usually farmers will take out a big loan to buy their seed stock for the year, they'll plant that, and then they operate off of the revenue that they generate from the sale of their product. That product sale is necessary for them to get that money. And so if it's sitting in a silo in, Kindersley, there is no money coming in for that farmer. And so it has to get from Kindersley onto a train, over to Richardson, and out to China. And until that happens, they don't get any money, and so there has to be some kind of government backstoppage, which is what is being held up in the Senate.
I see.
Yes.
So it sounds like the argument is that the potash people and the oil people can afford the delay in a way that the Canadian farmers cannot.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Because like the potash people are
potash people.
Yeah, well, I mean, like they're the Canadian Potash Company, which is not a division of BHP Billiton and is apparently a national strategic industry, but it's like one company and not like 500,000 small farmers who are all individually depending on loans.
Right. Well, thank you for explaining that to us. I understand that you have been inspired creatively by this story and have a song to share.
Yeah. This is
Do we want to have it now?
Why don't we do a little rehearsing? We'll do it in the Easter eggs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So stay tuned after the "What else are you thinking about?" to hear
All right, so
the stupid song that I wrote about the grain crisis.
we watched him write it in real time. It was kind of amazing.
It's a real treat. So
That's a word.
that's all we have for you today. In terms of real political stuff, what else have you guys been thinking about?
I finally saw Black Panther, and it is really amazing.
My boyfriend gets here on Thursday,
High five.
Yay! I want a high five too.
and so
Do we get to meet him?
Yeah. He's nervous about meeting you because apparently he thinks that we're all politics-obsessed PC weirdos, but
PC?
not progressive conservative, politically correct.
I mean,
but,
I'm a Joe Clark fan.
yeah,
Joe
no,
Clark is my hero.
This is the thing, is that, like, while it would probably be ludicrous for you and I to be, like, advocating the same party, like, the 1979 Joe Clark Progressive Conservatives...
We had one party that we agreed on.
Neither of us belong to it anymore, nor does it exist.
That's cool. I'm excited to meet him.
Hi, James. Erin, how was Florida?
Florida was amazing.
Did you see gators?
I saw gators. I saw crocodiles. I saw all sorts
Manatees?
of birds. No manatees, unfortunately.
Oh, no.
No dolphins or turtles. I ate key lime everything.
What
I
was the
learned-
political climate like in Florida? Because you were there. Were you there during the aftermath of the shoot?
I was, yeah. It
Oh.
was like, it was all over the television, all the shooting stuff. And state of Florida has just passed a law saying that you have to be, 18 now to
21
buy?
to buy it,
21.
yeah.
21 to buy a...
So you can so the law used to be you could not buy bourbon, but you could definitely buy an AR-15.
A measure that I like cannot even call a half measure. It's more like a 16th measure, but well done, Florida, for the
Starting.
babiest of baby
Yeah,
steps.
a good trip.
It was a great trip. One of the things I really enjoyed learning about was the Everglades National Park, which is an incredible ecosystem and unique around the world, and learning about the people who fought to preserve it, because
interesting.
it has experienced a lot of urban expansion from the greater Miami area, and agriculture around that has sort of taken over this watershed. And a lot of people got together and under Truman government, I believe, to preserve what was left of the Everglades, which is incredibly important for storing water and for all of these animals and plants who live there, but also in terms of climate change. It's important for protecting the state from the impacts of climate change. So
Cool.
that was cool. Yeah, it was nice to get some sunshine.
Did you see any key deer? I know you were really excited to see key deer.
No key deer. No,
Oh.
sorry. Anyway, so that's been a lot of me talking about the Everglades.
Just start
Are we doing the song and then we're doing the
Just
closing?
say no. Do the closing. Let's do the closing, and then we'll do the song.
Okay. Okay, so that's all we have for you today. Thanks so much for listening. Please subscribe and share this episode. It's March 13th, 2018. I'm your host, Erin Rennie.
I'm Matthew Naylor.
And I'm Patrick Meehan.
Talk to you next time on Pod Keep Our Land.
Bum ba bum ba bum ba bum bum bum. When there's barley on the plain and the railroads won't ship grain, what are you gonna do?
Grain crisis.
Old man Winter.
Keep going.
Old man Winter slapped a lock on this nation's rolling stock. Mountain passes, they can't handle all that grain.
Grain crisis.
Still they're shipping coal and potash, while the farmers in a mad dash to get sorghum from the elevator to the train.
Grain crisis.
Ships are floating in the bay, awaiting shipments of hay. What has the world come to?
Grain crisis.
Bus time this conundrum hit the prairie. High oil prices left sea and rail feeling wary of filling up their cars with rice and wheat.
Grain crisis.
The Minister of Transport thusly planned to slap CN's invisible hand. Transport Minister Lisa Raichie earned her keep.
Grain crisis.
When it's a rail car that avulses your regions from wheat and pulses, and it's frozen to the track, then it's a true
Grain crisis.
And now 4 years later we are in this mess once more. The elevator's bursting, barley tumbles out the door. Farmers with loans coming due are told that they must wait. With shorter trains from cold weather, the MOT's cap needs a feather, and their leadership could sure be second rate.
Grain crisis.
Man, that was such a long walk for a Lisa Raichie pun.